Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minkah Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allan.
And with that, we are back with another edition of Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, and I'm so excited about this card. It was a wild week where, hey, we had a little bit of fodder between Li Jingliang and Khamzat Chimaev. There was, of course, the weigh-in issues of yikes, the man himself. I mean, Damir Ismagulov just breaking my heart. But overall, I absolutely love this card and want to thank everybody over there in the comments section. From Kevin Holland, if you're the real one. From Todd. There's a super chat already from Justin Franks, who's in the chat every single weekend. So appreciate that. And saying you've had a rough few last weeks. I mean, that's terrible to hear. But with this card coming up this weekend, I think we can all agree it is really chalky. There's a lot of really big favorites on it, but we'll break it down. We'll talk about some different fighters. And I saw there was a comment up there earlier, Matt. I'm going to scroll up to get it. As Billy Brown says, let's go bros. But there was somebody up there, and I mentioned it as we were doing the intro. Al S. said Nascimento undervalued. I think so. I mean, really, Tagir Ulanbekov hasn't wowed me, whether it was kind of regional scene, whether it was in his UFC debut, and it's been a long time since then as well. So, thank you so much for everybody that's tuned in. I'm sure the show's going to go absolutely bonkers. So, if you can toss us a like, it would certainly be appreciated, nice. And it's going to get that thing trending and moving ahead of UFC 267. Matt, this is such a special card, and next weekend, an even bigger card, it seems. It's crazy.
I don't know if I've ever said this before, but I don't really, I could get every pick wrong today, and I would still be pretty excited about these fights. You know, that's how good this card is. There's a surprising level of depth to today's card. We all know how good the pay-per-view main card is. I'm so excited about these fights. It's felt like a little while since we've had a big card. I know Volkanovski Ortega wasn't that long ago, but I couldn't be more excited. We have two great title fights today, and I really do think that they're two phenomenal fights, regardless of the belt.
James Sturts with the Where Y'all From? Coming up from old New Brunswick, Canada. We'll flip it on over to our Fight of the Night screen. Before we do, it's always presented by Manscaped. Check them out at manscaped.com. Use promo code FNP. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping. And Matt, I mean, hey, I guess all I can say is Petr Yan, Corey Sandhagen. Because you know what the first pick was? And I said it was my favorite fight on this card. Damir. Why you gotta go breaking my heart, Damir? Why? Coming in at 163, looking sickly on the scale. So ultimately, we don't get Mustafayev Ismagulov. No, I wasn't joking. I wasn't being cutesy. That was actually my favorite fight this weekend. So let's move it on over to our real pick. We said possible fight of the year in this one.
This is by far my favorite fight of the weekend, and it's not even close. I genuinely think by the time Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen's done, if it isn't a quick finish, it will be fight of the year, or at least regarded as one of the best fights of this year, because when you look at both guys' skill sets and just sort of overall game plans, they play into their opponent's skill set as well. And the great thing about Corey Sandhagen is that he can scramble, he can defend takedowns. He can respond with a lot of power too and volume. And with Petr Yan, I know we have him with the belt on because, he probably maybe still sort of kind of maybe is champion.
I changed it for later on.
Okay, perfect. But Petr Yan has demonstrated that, yes, other than that one illegal technique that he threw against Aljamain Sterling, he still sort of is the best 135-pounder in the world. So I'm really excited for this fight.
We'll see what happens. Matt up there earlier in the chat saying he was a new subscriber. Can't wait to 30,000. I mean, hey, it's got to happen. It's got to come up pretty quick. But Matt, yeah. If this is your first time tuning in for Question Mark Kicks, what we do, we start at the bottom of the card, we hop back up to the top, and I see a lot of people kind of throwing down their picks, their predictions over there in the comments section. 100% do so if you can. I definitely want to hear from you. Phoenix saying, I've heard Hezbollah touched Abdul Razak's camera through the fence. Oh, yeah, you got to follow Proto, buddy. And Matt, the funniest part about it was the old cheap shot there on, who was it, Nogueira.
Minotaur, yeah, he did that to someone else, too. That's like his thing.
Not cool. Not cool. I don't
if he did that to Dan Hooker would probably score a field goal by the sounds of it.
I made a mistake because I just thought about it. It was Abdul Rosic, who was supposed to fight. Did they ever fight? I don't know. But what I do know is this is a great card. So let's go bottom all the way back up to the top. And the first fight on the prelims for this card, we have Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Allan, Nascimento, and Matt. In this fight, honest to goodness, and I think I said it at the start of the week, that I didn't have the most confidence in Tagir Ulanbekov. Obviously, both guys come in, they make weight. Ulanbekov, right on championship, right on the money. Craziest thing about this card, kind of inside baseball, when I went to do the graphics, when I do the 1080 by 1080s, and then I put them out on Instagram too, at Fight Night Picks, in the story where you vote for them, so on and so forth, I changed the weights to make them current and accurate. And a lot of the people weighed in at the same weight that they were their very last time out. So it made it really easy for me. But when I look at this fight, for Tagir Ulanbekov, he's one of those cousins of Khabib Nurmagomedov. And you've seen pictures of them, you know, that they'll post from when they were kids to teenagers to now, and they still train together at AKA. And so for Tagir, he's going to be taking on Nascimento, who I saw the question over there earlier. Well, what's Nascimento really good at? I mean, he's got a great Muay Thai background, but he doesn't typically like to be a striker. He likes to take it down to the mat, which could ultimately be to his detriment. And obviously, he is a big underdog in this fight. We'll get into that. But for me, Nascimento is one of those guys that he's kind of like an energizer buddy. Busy, 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 busy. You look at that loss that he had to Paiva. I thought he won rounds 1 and round 2, but ultimately it was a very close fight. And I want to say it was either Mike's MMA Picks or Adam Martin that tweeted this week, and I tossed a like on it. It was the fact that that was one of the best fights on Contender Series of all time. So it's a really fun one. I really like this fight.
And just about that Contender Series fight, it was two guys you could kind of tell during their fight. You're like, oh, both guys really do deserve to be in the UFC. It feels like in Contender Series, there's a lot of those like squash matches where you're like, okay, we all know who's supposed to win this one. I am oddly excited for this fight. And I agree with everything you said, especially about Nascimento, where he's this good striker, but it's almost like he doesn't have the confidence in his own striking to really let himself flow on the feet sometimes. And it'll be really interesting to see what his game plan is against Ulanbekov, because if he is able to strike on the outside and start stringing together some of his rangefinder attacks, it's going to make Ulanbekov's just overall grappling game that much harder to initiate, because he'll be attacking from that much further away. My only issue is that I think Nascimento is going to engage a lot in the clinch, in some of those grappling exchanges, and I just don't think he's going to be able to end up on top of Ulanbekov at the end of any of those scrambles. Do I think he can have success in some of them? Yes, I do, and I can honestly see him maybe not ending up on top of Ulanbekov, but you get the idea, just threatening with enough positions to where it might look like he's getting into some dominant positions. I just think Ulanbekov is the much more consistent guy on the mat, and this is one of those fights where, yes, I like a lot from Nascimento. I just think stylistically, there's a lot to like from Ulanbekov.
I mean, going through this, it's kind of crazy. You know, he had almost 3 years off from that fight against Paiva to his last fight in July, where he had a first-round finish against a guy that was, 5-2? So it's really hard to tell how good a guy can be that, you know, in the UFC, what he can implement. Ray's saying, tell me what Nascimento is really better at. Cardio of Tagir will break him. I mean, listen, I don't see Tagir Ulanbekov going out there and throwing the quality of kicks that Nascimento can, and that's one of those things that really popped up in my head. He can go to the calf, he can go to the lead leg, he can go to the body,
if he
can
kicks Ulanbekov, he's getting taken down.
That's the really tricky thing, but if you're asking what he's better at, I'd say he's better at that. Purely, if we're just hitting a bag, who's going to look better doing it? Probably Nascimento. I'd say the Jerry West of kick. No, I'm just kidding. The Michael Jordan of grappling is Travis Lutter. But yeah, when I look at this one, Matt, it really is tricky. Let's have a look at the odds, and then we'll really kind of break it down a little bit. And I got to click the parlay thing off of Best Fight Odds, because is there a QMK parlay? Yes, there is. Does it start on this fight? Yes, it actually does. Oh. Tagir Ulanbekov open to -300. He's -385 right now. For Nascimento, open to +250. He's a +297. And if we go to good old Instagram, which I have on my phone, and we look at Fight Night Picks for the votes on this one, 87% Ulanbekov to 13% Nascimento. I wonder if there's a little bit where Nascimento, you talk about being undervalued. Maybe he's the lesser known commodity. He doesn't get the rub from the Islam Makhachevs, Zubair Tukhugavs, and obviously Khabib Nurmagomedovs. There's a lot of guys out of that camp, but it definitely is an uphill battle when you look at a guy like Nascimento in this one. I like his staying power, though, and I've seen him in a lot of fights where he's the type of guy, all of his losses are by decision. For me, I looked at this one. The over 1.5 rounds was a little skewed. It was a minus 350. That's the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay. I'm fine with that one.
I've got Ulanbekov to win still.
Yeah, I've got Ulanbekov as well. I think he's going to be able to get it done. I think this one's going to go to a decision, but I like that over 1.5 rounds. Kind of keep it safe for me because, hey, who knows? Maybe a guy threatens with a choke. We end up with a submission. I think this is going to be a great fight. So let's move on to our next one. And we have, you talk about unknown commodities. We have Yaozong taking on Andre Petrovsky. And both of these guys, when you boil it down to what they're really good at, who billed as a striker in his first 2 UFC fights against Cyril Asker at 265, against Rashad Coulter at 205, where Coulter missed weight and then got cut off a win, which is kind of crazy, coming down to 185. Now, he weighed in at 185 his last time out, where he's supposed to take on Allan Amedovski. Amedovski, no dice, who looks like a brick, you-know-what. So he looks absolutely bodied up. He's been training at China Top Team. Main training partner is actually Li Jingliang. He's going to be taking on Andre Petrovsky, a guy who's taking this fight on relative short notice. Matt, what's the walkout song going to be?
It might be Island Boys. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I do know Sean Brady was trying to get that together with Ariel Helwani, so...
Do you think we could do that with our hair and get face tattoos?
I mean, those guys are just out there. Like, we're kind of weird, I'd say, but they take it to a whole new level.
All right, so when we look at this fight and we have Rob G saying, I miss Mario Yamasaki, now it's story time. So our first ever UFC event, and this is crazy because I was talking about this with a guy the other day from Halifax. It was UFC Halifax. I don't have the poster up here. It's actually out
Travis
in my
Brown,
entryway.
Derek Lewis.
Travis Brown, Derek Lewis. So after that fight ends and it's gross and it's terrible, we kind of stuck around. We had the post-fight interview from Derek Lewis in the cage. We still hung around a little bit, waited for everybody to leave, and then we're out on the streets with the general population. It's like closing time, leaving a bar, except that song doesn't play. So we're walking around and there's guys with black shirts on with their last names on it or their monikers, and son of a gun, it's Mario Yamasaki and Keith Peterson, and there's 2 Deltas downtown in Halifax, and they didn't know which one they were at, and you heard, where's the hotel? And of course, that's not Mario Yamasaki.
No.
That's that guy, Keith Peterson, that let a lot of unanswered shots go to the back of the head with the PFL this week. But yeah, that's the story. So
your stories are...
Listen, it was still pretty good. But Matt, on this fight, Yaozong taking on Andre Petrovsky. The crazy thing is, when you look at who's 3 wins and you go back and you watch them, he's primarily wrestling lower levels of competition, but also he's not at middleweight.
This is the thing about Yaozong. Why do we keep on calling him a striker if he doesn't really strike that much in MMA? That's all. Like, I don't understand why we don't just judge fighters off what they do in the cage more often, because it seems like a lot of the times there'll be a fighter and we talk about a lot about, oh, this is the training that they're doing, or this is what we think that they're going to do, and they don't actually demonstrate, the thing that they go in there and do. When I think about Yaozong, I think about him not primarily as a wrestler, but a lot of his skill set does revolve around his takedown, and he is one of those fighters who, he's a good striker, he's a good wrestler, but for everything to really work together, he does have to implement both and make it an MMA fight. I know you guys are probably tired of me saying that. I'm going to say this, though. If you put any money on this fight, I'm not going to call you stupid, but it's just, there's not enough information on either guy, especially at this weight class, at least not for me, because with Yaozong, he could be one of those fighters who, yes, you didn't look good at heavyweight, you didn't look great at light heavyweight, but maybe
he looked pretty good at light heavyweight.
He did, but Rashad Coulter's one thing. I don't know if having a close losing effort against Rashad Coulter is, wow, you're going to be that guy. It's just at middleweight, though, this is a new division. He does physically look a lot different, and that's the thing about Yaozong. When you put that much work into just completely transforming your physique, it's not like this guy hasn't been working hard for the past few years since he has been off. There's so many question marks surrounding Yaozong that if he went out there and won and looked really good, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever, but my pick still has to remain with Petrovsky.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at it, who has the best pure wrestling out of these 2 guys? I would go with the American in this fight, with Andre Petrovsky, and it's not just because he's an American, it's the fact that, he had a really weird, he went, D1, D2, D3, and not up, which is kind of strange, but whatever. He still has that wrestling pedigree from high school on, and the fact that he trains out of such a great gym with so many high-level guys. You talk about Sean Brady, but the list goes on. And you can really talk about a lot of guys there. Jeremiah Wells is another guy there as well. So when I look at this one, yeah, the odds are a little squirrely, and you talk about biggest movers and shakers on this card. There's been a lot of guys that have moved quite a bit. I was on Riz Radio this week on Wednesday night, and we talked about the fact that when fighters move in terms, like when line movement goes this much, usually that fighter does actually end up on top. For Petrovsky, 53% line movement.
Wow.
He opened at par. He's minus 233 right now. For Yaozong, he opened at par. He's a plus 189. Tonio Jaraguch hitting us up on the Super Chat saying, see next week's Contender Series. Canada's on the map. Yes, they are, and I'm really excited about it, and so thank you for the Super Chat. 77% of the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram going with Petrovsky to 23% with Hu Yaozong. The only thing I want to say is Yaozong's a very durable guy, and I think this move to 185, cardio-wise, I don't think he's going to be all that compromised. Physicality-wise, he looks amazing. Petrovsky's one of those guys that wrestles himself into exhaustion. If he loses, he's lost one pro fight to Aaron Jeffrey that way. He lost one fight on Contender Series where he kind of got tired and a little sloppy. And old Pooh Bear, Brian Battle, who has to have another Ultimate Fighter finale against Tresean Gore.
It's going to be a great fight.
It'll be a great fight. But yeah, when I look at that one, he kind of just got himself caught because he got a little tired and made a mistake. So for me, I still do like Petrovsky. So the pick is Petrovsky, but I like over 1.5 rounds at minus 160. And if you go with that and over 1.5 rounds in Ulanbekov Nascimento, it's a plus 109. That's my question mark kicks parlay there because I think both guys are durable enough to get past that 2 minute and 30 mark in the second round.
I still think Petrovsky's going to win. It just, again, for me, it would be really hard to put any kind of money on this fight just because of how many question marks there are surrounding Hu Yaozong at this weight class. I was someone who thought Jared Cannonier was like a subpar UFC fighter until he finally went down to middleweight, and now he's like one of the best fighters in that weight class. I understand that's about as dramatic.
Because of the crystals.
I get that's about as dramatic of a difference you can make in your career, and I don't expect Hu Yaozong to just automatically start knocking people out, but I think there is a world out there where he looks really good at 185, and that's what scares me off this fight.
The best comment there is from, and I want to make sure I get it right, Co-Dizzle saying generic Julian Marquez for the win. Haha, Petrovsky's what you get when you buy Marquez off of Wish. That's exactly what you get. It's Julian Marquez. Mom, can we have Julian Marquez? No, you have Andre Petrovsky at home. Matt, Makwan Amirkhani's taking on Lerone Murphy, and we were very critical about this fight at the start of the week, and I think it's warranted. Now, both guys looking fit and ready on the scales. Both guys made weight successfully. Makwan obviously had a bit of a stinker his last time out, but that's kind of been the scoop for his last, 3-4 fights. And it's been a really weird trend where, listen, yeah, you lose against really good competition. We focus on those last 4 fights. Lost to Shane Burgos. Hey, stuff like that's going to happen. Then you beat Danny Henry that fights once in a blue moon. You lose to Barboza by decision. Okay, that's fair. Then you lose to Camwella Kirk. Now, that fight was on short notice, but at the same time, and again, I know I picked Kirk to win that fight. However, you're going from Barboza to Camwella Kirk that's somewhere in here but not way up there. So for Amirkhani, you want to get back in the good graces of the UFC. You want to get back in the winning circle because I have to figure if Amirkhani loses this fight, it's Bellator European Series for him.
I would agree, and it's almost a disservice to Amirkhani because he is a bigger name than his ranking or just sort of standing within the company would suggest. Because with Amirkhani, that's what everybody talks about. Like, we bring up his Tapology picture more than anything just because he's known as like, oh, he's a model over in Europe and he has stuff going on outside of the UFC. And with Amirkhani, I just look at him in the whole grand scheme of things as he could be a fun fighter from like 25 to 20 range, but even those are the fights that I'm going to struggle to see him win in. And I think Lerone Murphy, like here's the question. If Lerone Murphy fought Shane Burgos, where would the odds be? They'd be pretty close, I would think.
I think so, yeah.
I would have them maybe Burgos is a minus 145 at the most, I would say, but they would be around that range. I think Lerone Murphy, one day, and that day is soon, going to be in the top 15. I really do. And I just don't think Makwan Amirkhani is that level of fighter anymore. And with Amirkhani, it's really weird. It's almost like his style leads to his downfall 9 times out of 10. The UFC just cut another fighter who was the poster boy for what Amirkhani does. what do we always call out Andrew Sanchez for? Wrestling himself into exhaustion. For Amirkhani to have his most success, he has to go for a lot of takedowns, but what we've seen throughout his UFC tenure is that his cardio isn't on the level of his wrestling, so for him to have the most success, it's just going to make him tired later on in the fight.
Well, that's it, and he can struggle in some of those striking exchanges because for Makwan, he can tend to bring his hands down as the fight goes on, which is something that really scares me. Now, when I look at this fight, and I see it there after Burgos eats Quarantillo, and I saw another fight that got moved around, Pat Sabatini's fight. They moved it to later on in November. Nice. On that Gavin Tucker train of thought. But Matt, when I look at this one, yeah, for Amirkhani, since he's moved to Team MA, the results really haven't been there. For Murphy, you know exactly where he's coming from. You know roughly exactly what you're going to get. And Jonathan hitting us up in the super chat. I saw you up there earlier, but saying, thanks guys, really like your breakdowns a lot and appreciate it. Hope all is well in Canada. It's starting to get cold. I left the heat pump on all night. It got really hot up here. That's the first time I've really used it, so yeah, that's all I've got.
Makwan Amirkhani is kind of like me in middle school. Like, I really wanted to be good at running long distance, but I had asthma when I was a kid, and that sort of prevented me. Makwan Amirkhani wants to be a really good wrestler. He just doesn't have great cardio, and that's what prevents him from really pulling off that game plan in the cage. It's just, you can see a path. It just feels like there's a massive roadblock right before the end of it every time with Amirkhani.
Now, the only caveat is this kind of feels like when Ludwig Klein was taking on Nate Landwehr, and if there's a giant upset, and it wasn't that giant, but still, it'd be crazy. Now, Murphy opened a minus 300. You could have had him in a minus 347. He's a minus 300 again right now. All the money came in on Amirkhani, who opened a plus 250. He's a plus 240 right now. 90-90 saying Murphy by decision. And Preston is saying, Open UFC Chronicles Retail, it's cheap. If I could find any. The only thing I have, you can grab it over there. It's that yellow box on the top.
This?
Yeah. You know what? We'll open that in this episode, and we'll have fun. It'll be a crossover. The votes for this one, 82% Murphy to 18% going with Makwan Amirkhani. So there is that. I like Lerone Murphy in this fight. I think he's a great prospect. I know he doesn't have a loss on his record, but he's impressed me so much, even in that short notice Takugov fight, that this guy can take on very good levels of competition. So I've got Murphy here.
Yeah, I think he's ready for like those Shane Burgos types of names, those Billy Q guys, those guys who are on those borderline top 15. Because if Murphy does get that one big win and finally gets his name into the rankings, hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier for him to get those big name opponents. Because I do think Murphy will find himself sort of in that weird rut where it's like, okay, you're a really good fighter outside the rankings. Why would anybody with a number next to their name really take that risk and try to fight you? So hopefully Murphy can get a little bit of hype behind him and crack into the rankings.
All right, Matt, let's see what we've got in our next fight. We have Shamil Gamzatov take on Michał Oleksiejczuk. And Matt, this is the fight where I go back and forth, as this is probably the most volatile fight on this card, because for Gamzatov coming into the UFC, okay, you have a great Sambo pedigree, you can wrestle to get into position, to do damage when you're on the ground. How many wins do we have over high-level competition by finish? Maybe not a lot of them. And for Olashaychuk, he has UFC wins. He has UFC wins by finish. He's beaten tenured guys like Jean Vellante.
Top finish is gross.
There are some things there. Madden P saying any other Aussie staying up till 5 a.m., which is kind of crazy. Ooh. But when I look at this fight, yeah, I mean, for Olashaychuk, his takedown defense can struggle against guys that can wrestle. Sus. Jimmy Crute. And for Shamil Gamzatov, can he really strike with good strikers? I don't know if he can. Now, he doesn't have a single loss on his record, but how good is his wrestling really against some of the upper elite competition? That's why this one is a very, very tough fight for me to kind of try and get, because I feel like it's a crapshoot either way, and you're going to look stupid either way.
This is kind of like a poor man's Xing Liang versus Chimaev. Like, not 100% there, but Lord Michael is Li Xing Liang in this situation. He's going to basically have to do the, I'm probably going to get taken down no matter what, so let's just go for it. Now, I actually don't think his style plays towards that very well, whereas I can see Li Xing Liang thinking that. I can see his trainer saying, like, hey, try to knock him out quick, because if not, we're going to get taken down a lot. With Olashaychuk, he can find himself moving backwards a lot in his fights, and that's the worst version of Olashaychuk. When he's the one moving forwards, and I hate using this term because normally it's a negative, but with him I find it's a positive, he does sort of lunge forward with his shots. Now, it is a negative. He can get countered if he's fighting a guy with really good movement on his back foot, but what it allows him to do is cover a lot of distance at light heavyweight. And not a lot of guys in this weight class really use their feet and hands together like Olashaychuk is able to. Now, I know I'm painting the picture of like a ranked light heavyweight right now, but he is far from it. And with Gamsatov, it'll be really interesting because this is one of those fights where I don't really think Olashaychuk can grapple with Gamzatov at all on the mat, but I don't think Gamzatov can really strike a whole lot with Olashaychuk on the feet. So more than anything, it's going to come down to the game plan of Gamzatov, and really, how is he going to time his entries on Olashaychuk for timing his takedowns?
Well, and the really tricky thing when you look at this fight, and stats don't tell the whole story, because for Gamzatov, he only has the one UFC win. It was a split decision over Klidson de Abreu. But you look at it, and for Michael, he's a southpaw, and for Gamzatov, on his entries, he likes to throw that low leg kick, so it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with the southpaw with his kicks to get into range to get the takedown. So I'm eager to see this one. When we look at the odds for this fight, with Gamzatov, he is the favorite ever so slightly now. He opened a minus 150 or thereabouts, dropped all the way to a minus 170, he's minus 123 at this point. For Olashaychuk, you could have had him at a plus 130, right now at a plus 102. Santiago is saying, let's go Michael, and AG saying, yeah, I'm not going to repeat that. But when I look at this one, yeah, 69% at Fight Night Picks going with Gamzatov to 31% with Lord Michael. Matt, let's find a couple of good comments to go with. Ray Quinones is saying Michael's guard is too high. It's going to be easy for Shamil to get the takedown. Jonathan's saying, yeah, okay, we're not going to get into it. Yeah, it's gone off the rails with the talk of what's legal in Canada at this point. So, Matt, when we're talking about this fight, what are we saying here? What are you saying here?
I think Lord Michael's got a pretty good chance of winning this, but I still don't think he's going to, because this is the issue with him. All of his positives are extreme positives, but all of his negatives are extreme negatives. And when you tell the story of Michael Olashaychuk, I can tell you everything he does well, and if you've never seen him fight, you would think he's like a Fedor level fighter. Now, on the flip side, if you've never seen him fight, and I just wanted to bring up all the negatives, you would think that this guy's Anthony Freight Train Hamilton. Like, those are the differences that we're talking about with his ceiling and his floor. With Gamsatov, I have a lot of question marks about him, but I would rather the unknown of the grappler than the, I would just say, inconsistencies of what I've seen from Olashaychuk so far. If you've been Von Prude, because I'm not even going to call it the Von Flu, it's now the Von Pru. If you've been Von Prude, I have serious concerns about your grappling off of your back. So if Gamsatov's able to get one takedown, will he get the submission immediately? Maybe not, but I do think he'll at least be able to control Olashaychuk enough to win rounds.
P-Man saying he'd like to take on a Canadian. He wants to fight Lorne Michaels. I mean, listen, there's probably a lot of people for just the way that SNL is now. Yeah, I've got Shamil Gamzatov in this fight. I think he's going to be able to get the takedown, so we're in agreement on this one.
We are, but I think you can agree. Like, there's about 45 worlds out there where Olashaychuk lands an overhand left and do an uppercut and looks great.
Yeah, Santiago saying Gamzatov or Michael in my parlay. No dice. No way, Jose. This one's too volatile. So it brings us to our next fight, Matt. We have Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos taking on Benoit Saint-Denis, and Matt Todd hitting us up in the super chat saying you guys are the only Island boys I recognize. Hey, there's a lot of good guys out there, too. I was fortunate to be on Riz Radio this week. That was a lot of fun. We talked about, again, the line movement, some of the top fights on this card. And then I had the platform to say, hey, what's your favorite fight, Craig? Well, at the time, it was Ismagulov and Mustafayev, and my heart is broken. So, when we look at this fight, I really am excited about it because it pits a clash of styles. We have the capoeira from Elizeu, but he's getting older. He's getting up there, and at welterweight, it kind of scares you a little bit, taking on a guy who is all explosion. It's gimme fuel, gimme fire, gimme that, which Benoit Saint-Denis desires, because this guy is just fit and ready. He's a French SAS member, 5 years, and the way that he fights is all blood and guts as long as it lasts. And if you want blood and guts, this is no contest where clash of heads, gets cut, then gets kind of ridden on the canvas, and it's like a blood painting. It's kind of gross.
It is.
But I absolutely love this one. Over in the comments section, Dimitar is saying this show will fail because Buffer's not there. That's kind of crazy. Santiago saying Zaleski by KO. McNugget saying definitely a live fight. 100%. And Super Ray saying bonne chance, les bons gamins. Ha ha ha. Yeah, so pour moi, Benoit Saint-Denis, he's a very impressive fighter. I love this fight, and I think Saint-Denis is going to have a long career in the UFC. Not just like burn out if he wins or if he loses here.
So in the 90s in the NBA, they didn't have rookie scale contracts, and it was called the too much too soon era because there were these guys just coming out of college like 1 year, getting $100 million, and they had no idea what to do with it. I think we need a too much, too soon, too fast category for the UFC, where it's, you're going to be a good fighter, and I see promise in you, but the UFC gave you no favors in your UFC debut, and I just don't really know how they're trying to build their fighters of tomorrow, because this is the problem. If you're bringing a fighter in to fight Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, you want a guy who's going to go in there, have one of those blood and gut type of fights. Have a fight that you can put on Twitter, show the highlights, and everybody can get excited about. With Saint-Denis, he's someone who is willing to eat a shot, which is probably going to be a really fun fight. He's got that really fun grinding style. And like you said, he just doesn't stop. Like, the pace that he can put on you in a fight really is impressive. I just worry that he's almost too confident in his own durability. And that's a great thing to be. Like, I would much rather you be confident in your durability than have a chin like Alistair Overeem where you just go down a lot. Being durable is something I worry about when you're fighting a guy like Dos Santos, because he can fight the volume game and he can fight the power game. Now, the flip side of that is he can be somewhat hesitant on his back foot, and that's really what this fight comes down to. If he's the aggressive Dos Santos who's moving forward, throwing a lot of volume, he should be able to land the knockout strike in this, because I would say there's levels to striking, and in this fight, Zaleski Dos Santos is on an incredibly high level compared to Saint-Denis, but when it comes to the grappling and the grinding style of Saint-Denis, I could see him having success.
That's it. This fight, incredibly volatile, because to me it really depends on which Zaleski shows up, and that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you can lose to Li Jingliang, that's fine. I mean, listen, he's the one that's fighting on the main card, but this is really a tricky fight where we've seen fights like this. Again, Terrence McKinney, Matt Frivola. Frivola's a great wrestler. McKinney can really get it done in all different areas. He goes in, bang, and then he hurts his knee in the celly, so he's been out for a while. But there's been a lot of fights like this, and I saw the comments where a lot of people on short notice have been winning lately, but on the flip side, it's easy to remember the big ones. It's also easy to forget the ones that didn't really show up. So when I look at this, at Fight Night Picks, 61% have Zaleski to get the win, 39% on Saint-Denis. I want to hear from everybody over there in the comments section. Somebody's talking about checking Maine out. Miss him. Can go back very shortly. Looking forward to that one. The odds for this fight, Matt, for Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos coming out of Brazil. He is a decent-sized favorite. Open minus 225, minus 243 right now. Pour Benoit Saint-Denis, plus 190 et plus 197 maintenant. So, for me, I like the favorite in this fight. But again, if Saint-Denis is going to get the win, I'd like him like first round, because I think after that he's going to struggle. The problem for me with Saint-Denis is the fact that when he's fighting, you talked about it, his hands start like between his chest and his waist, and as the fight goes on, his hands go down to his hips, where, again, for a guy that can wrestle and that can manage distance well too, he can have a lot of success there. I mean, listen, Vettori can do it, but he's a very, very, a very select case at the top of the division. Luis hitting us up in the super chat saying, continued support for the continued A+ content.
Thank you.
Listen, Super Ray is going all on the French today, and maybe I will one day, but yeah, in this fight, I like Zaleski, especially with the striking. Would I be surprised if Saint-Denis takes it to the mat, gets a great opportunity to take the bat, goes Vendramini, and then gets a submission? It'd be crazy, but crazier things have happened. I still like Zaleski here.
I like Zaleski quite a bit in this fight.
All right, Matt, we move into our next one. We have Duraev taking on Kopylov. And Matt, I couldn't get rid of the picture because it looks like he's wearing a Burger King t-shirt and he's got a belt. He's hanging outside in the parking lot. I liked it a lot. When I look at this one, though, I think this is such an interesting fight because for Kopylov, he's been out for so long. He might have disappointed in his debut because a lot of people had very high aspirations. That's the thing. People are going to look at this fight with rose-colored glasses and go, well, Duraev, he won 2 belts, and he lost to good guys. Lost by knockout, though, but he lost to really good guys that are UFC caliber, and he beat guys that were good fighters. And that's the thing. Like, Peter Struess is a very good fighter. He's just not in the UFC. Roman Kopylov beat good fighters too, but it was so long ago, and then he didn't impress. So how good is he really? I can tell you how good he is. Excellent striker. Pops the jab out there. Makes fights very interesting. And again, I think that championship caliber really bodes well for him in the UFC. It's just the activity hasn't been there. For Duraev, the activity wasn't there. Boom, until he fights on Contender Series, which is weird for a former double champ from another organization to have to fight on Contender Series. And that speaks more about fighter pay and the path to the UFC than anything. But Duraev, Kopylov, such an interesting clash of styles.
The odds on this fight are insane. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, can we check those right now? Because
yeah,
I have a whole theory on this. Like,
Duraev's a pretty big. Oh, he's a big favorite.
As he should be.
Open minus 180, minus 382 right now. Kopylov open plus 155. He's a plus 292. Biggest mover and shaker on the card is Chimaev at 56% clip. 53% is Duraev. 53% Petrovsky.
It's just, this is a very odd fight because I think Duraev should excel in pretty much every single area of this. Like, I think there's areas where Kopylov can have success, but when I look at Duraev, I really think he could be a future guy in the ranks. I just think he has to kind of put it all together in that similar, like, remember what you say about Gilbert Burns style?
Well, let's go over into the comments section. MMA DFS is always calling us out, saying Matt Allan is the type to proudly wear a Tyler Hero jersey.
I have one downstairs.
Dan is saying, where do you get the odds? Best fight odds, and then on the corner, there's like a little graph. If you hit that, you get the average throughout the week. So that's where we go there. And I think there was a question about what do you use to find records and such. Records are for DJs, no. But ESPN and then Topology are the two most credible sources that you can go with.
Sometimes they differ, but
SureDogs, I don't like to go to SureDog for that kind of stuff. So when I look at this one, continue. It's such an interesting fight, though.
I completely forget where I was, Craig.
All right, that's fair. MMA DFS is saying love Fight Night picks, but you were going off on the fact that you think Duraev is going to win in every aspect. I disagree a bit. I think Kopylov, when the fight starts standing, I think he can have a lot of success. But then, again, like the Peter Barrett wave, we're in Slippery's world if it goes to the mat.
I just think he's going to overextend himself way too much on the feet, and that's what I worry about. Because if he does have any sort of success in his striking, I think the confidence is almost going to be a detriment to him. Because the more strikes you throw, the more likely you are to get taken down. So it's a really tough stylistic matchup for Kopylov. I do like Duraev.
Timmy Tarr says ESPN has Connor's record at 99-0. I don't know about that one. All right, Matt.
It wouldn't. Dana White's probably the one controlling those.
69% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have Duraev to win. I have Duraev in this one because if it touches the mat, great opportunity there. But again, standing, maybe you do like Kopylov. It's just a tricky one. Joshua Ray Martinez Sardon is saying, we need you guys on ESPN. Hey, if the Duck can make it to the PFL, maybe we can make it. But I don't have Jonathan Coachman connections, so I'm sorry.
We're trying.
I have other connections, which is weird. And listen, I had a connection that actually kind of popped out there this week on MMA Hour with Ariel Hawani. Did you see that? Sean Strickland. Yikes. Know about that for a long time. Kept that in my back pocket.
Yeah.
Ricardo Ramos is taking on Zubaira Tukhugov, and I need to hear... Oh, Dan's saying, is there an ESPN in Canada? It's TSN. And they already have a great guy there in Aaron Bronstetter.
Which is really nice, because we genuinely have one of the best guys in the whole industry covering it on a consistent basis, who actually gets TV time to talk about it, which is great, because if we didn't have a resource like Aaron Bronstetter up here in Canada, there's just not that many other places to go to for MMA news, so it is so nice that such a trusted and just, a good personality is actually on TV to teach other people about it.
Friend of the show.
I can't say enough good things about Aaron Bronstetter.
And then if you want to play the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, we're 1 degree away from Joseph Altolini, who I'd love to have on the show. But Matt, Ramos is taking on Tukhugov, and if you haven't checked out our second channel before, it's 15-minute card breaks where we talk about sports cards. If you don't like it, that much is true and fair. But I picked up a box of Topps Archive Snapshots 2021. Very limited, very hard to get. I'm going to open those now as we talk about Ramos and Tukhugov. But Matt, again, another clash of styles, although one guy has rounded out his game a little bit more than the other has.
For Ramos, he just is such a well-rounded fighter at this stage of his career, and it is really interesting because in my mind's eye, he went from, I'm just a grappler to, hey, now I throw spinning stuff on the feet. And with Ramos, I thought he was going to get absolutely mopped by Algeo in his last fight at 145 because I thought he was undersized. I have a pretty high opinion on Algeo. But what he demonstrated in that fight was that the size wasn't really an issue. It was Ramos' superior technique. This is really distracting. So
Go
I'm
ahead,
going to let you do that.
Continue.
Is that Ramos is, he is so well-rounded, and the fact that he can strike on the outside and play that kind of a game, but also try to grapple his opponents on the mat is really nice. So there's a lot of positives to take from Ramos, but my issue is that defensively, he just leaves a lot to be desired. I do worry about him striking on the back foot. I worry about his wrestling defense, so I do like Tukhugov quite a bit in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting one. Monty Harrison is our autograph out of that one, and we'll continue. But for Tukhugov, he's a guy, he's been at AKA for the longest time, but the trouble for him has been the inactivity and the inconsistencies too. I mean, if you look at some of his performances, and especially if you look at Zubaira Tukhugov's 5-on-in, that's where it gets really, really tricky because, of course, there's that fight against Lerone Murphy that counts as a draw. He was supposed to fight Artem Lobov a couple of times, but again, it's spread out so far to where his fit to last fight is a win by split decision over Felipe Nover, which is crazy. 5 years and 10 months ago, the other win there, Kevin Aguilar by knockout, that's kind of at his best. He loses by split decision to Min Hakim, which is fair, and then he has a split decision loss to Hanato Moicano. So the level of competition's all over the place. the amount that he's fought all over the place, whereas we've seen Ricardo Ramos fight often. The losses, Said Nurmagomedov, a guy who in his own right doesn't fight very often, Lerone Murphy. The wins, Bill Algeo, which again surprised you. A win over Eduardo Garagori, which I don't think holds a ton of water. Journey Newsom, who isn't all that consistent. Over in the comment section, Al Snow saying morning fellows, fight fellows. And Matt, what else is there? There's a lot of people going all over the place. So if we're making a pick here, I like Takedown in this fight with the takedowns. Would it surprise me if Ramos won this one on the feet? Honestly, it would. It really would.
I'd be surprised if he won on the feet. I actually think Hamos's best area to win this fight would be like some sort of a defensive submission up against the cage, because when Takedown's going for a lot of takedowns, it's not just like he goes for a single like, oh, I can't get this, let's reset in the middle of the cage. He's gonna stay dedicated to that takedown attempt and to that sequence, and that's where Ramos might be able to get a feel on. If you see Ramos initially go for the guillotine, they're in a bit of a wrestling transition, and Ramos has the chance to really feel around and lock that submission in. I could see him pulling something off like that. It's just, if that's your one area to beat a guy like Zubair Takedown, it's going to be a hard night in the office for you.
Justin Franks is saying, throw a like on the vids, fellas. We're already over 300 views, and this is early, like really early. It's 10:10 here where we're at. And yeah, we always start question mark kicks unless there's something crazy and we broadcast it out there. The fact that there's going to be a time change 2 hours before the prelims to kind of help everybody really level off and know when stuff's going to happen. Adam Riley being very nice over there in the comments section as well. Matt, Amanda Hebos is taking on old Vina. And Matt, this is a tricky fight. Now, we talked about this fight before we came on air, but when you look at this one, Amanda Hebos has had that promotional push almost from Jump Street, really, but it was by her own doing. She put on very impressive performances. Now, her last time out, really tricky fight against somebody who, you look at the whole way up, and yeah, from Marina Rodriguez, you got a draw peppered in there with Randa Marcos, who did look good her last time out, but it's just been weird. So for Hebos, it's tough, because I look at her losses. Okay, Marina, where she gets boxed up. And then I went back and I thought, okay, did I get it wrong? Polyana Viana, that fight, she got peppered on the feet and she kind of almost, it was like a standing, ooh, we're almost out. And Polyana finishes that fight. It's been in the striking. How's the grappling going to translate for Vina? Because for Mackenzie Dern, it didn't do all that well, but there were extenuating circumstances in that fight, which we touched on the first time out. So over in the comments section, Matt, I want to make sure that I kind of highlight some of these ones. AG saying Hebos is going to out-volume Karkara. Matt is saying Vina by sub upset round 3. Superboy saying Vina by decision. Craig P. Higgins has Vina. Who else? Apparently we're shouting out the Yonkers Police Department from Ray, and so on and so forth. But Matt, such an interesting fight. So what are we saying here?
I'm switching my pick on this. This is the only fight in the whole card where I'm switching my pick. And it's for these reasons. I had Vina winning all week long. I thought she was going to win by decision. I thought her wrestling would be good enough to at least consistently get enough takedowns to probably be able to win her the decision. But the more I've thought about it, and the more that I've gone back and watched some film, I think the footwork of Hebos is going to give Vina a lot of trouble on the feet. And it's not that I think Hebos is this like top tier striker in the division by any means. I do think Marina Rodriguez can go out there. She'll be able to beat her, I would say 8 times out of 10, let's say. Just stylistically, that's a very hard matchup for her. Now, Ioane and Jacek, I would say, would be another very difficult matchup for her. Just those fighters who have that great takedown defense and force you to do what they excel at. I just don't think Vina is that type of a fighter. I think she can go out there and get the offensive takedown. I just think she's going to struggle a lot at range in this fight. So for me, I thought this fight was going to be more of, it's going to be a lot of 50-50 on the feet, because Vina will be able to implement her wrestling and at least get enough cage control to sort of negate some of the success, I guess, that Hebos would have on the feet. But I do think Hebos' volume is going to allow her to pull away just a little bit more throughout the fight. I think this is an incredibly close fight, but the more that I've gone back, thought about it, I do think Hebos has a good chance.
Well, the focus over there, especially about the embedded, and I can see it, Hebos in the pool or whatever, that's kind of the craziest thing is who they decided to highlight this week. Did I see a lot of Islam Makhachev this week, even though he's on the main card?
He was all over Twitter and the UFC's Twitter stuff.
Twitter, but maybe not the embedded and some of the video content. So it's just weird to see the way that they decide to kind of market these. For Vina, negative striking differential, but you consider who she's fought. For Hebos, positive striking differential, same thing can be said. And the way that these two win, it's totally different. Except for Vina's last fight when she fought an Olympic level wrestler and broke her arm. So really gross stuff in that one. But when we're making the pick, I just want to talk about the odds really quickly, Matt, because in this fight, if you look at it for a very tricky fighter in Amanda Ribas, she is the favorite, open to minus 120, minus 164 right now for Vina. She opened to minus 110, again at par. She's now a plus 137 underdog. The last thing that I want to get on this one, as George Grunt hits us up in the super chat and says, very excited for this card and excited for Jan Blachowicz to get the knockout win. I just want to see what the votes are at on this. Very close, Matt. 51% Ribas to 49% for Vina. I still have Vina in this spot, but you've got the switch of the pick here.
I do. I like the volume. I like the overall kicking game from Ribas too, because you kind of brought it up for me. When we see Ribas struggle, it's against rangier strikers. When she's allowed to just defend takedowns, grapple as much as she wants to, and when she's the superior striker, she normally can have a lot of success, so I do like her in this matchup. I think this is the UFC trying to build her back up again.
I have a very hard time on this one, and I still do like Vina because, again, if we're getting it done on the mat, I think she can have a lot of success. Though Ribas is great at scrambling in some of those bad positions, when it comes to striking, Vina's a little bit trickier, I guess. Ribas is very technical, but I do love this fight and can see it for either woman. I just like Vina here. We're split on the pick, Matt. We move into the main card. Now, for the main card, we have a big-time fight companion coming up on the channel, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see this one because both guys primary strikers, but the way that they do it is very different, and when the fight goes to the mat, both guys have a different path to victory, if we even see it there. For Magomed Ankalaev, a technician of the nth degree. Look at his fight against Dalcha Lungiambula if you want to see a disgusting knockout. Look at his fights against Iwan Kutsalaba if you want to have fun. And then look at his last win. It was very, very impressive. For Volkan Oezdemir, I can pick apart his last 5 fights like, it's like a knife through a piece of paper. It's just very weird and it's easy to see. But yeah, when we have this one, Matt, very different fighters, very different paths to victory. I'm going to switch this one up because we both picked Ankalaev at the start of the week, and I anticipate we both pick him here. What's the path to victory for Volkan Oezdemir?
Here's the great news. I actually think there's quite a few ways Volkan can win this fight. And I know they're both primary strikers, so it's not like I think he's going to really switch it up, go for takedowns, and start using a lot of clinch control. But there's a game plan out there where Volkan is able to work behind the jab, because in the past we have seen his ability to use some of his volume. I know a lot of people know him for that Dame Time, No Time Volkan Oezdemir, but
Jimmy.
Volkan is a very technical fighter, and that really is the first thing that should jump out at you. It shouldn't just be the knockout power, because when Oezdemir is dedicated to the light kick, when he is sound offensively, he's a hard fighter to beat. Even go back to the first round of the Yuri Prochazka fight. He was doing extremely well in that fight up until he gets hit by the head kick, and of course, one of the filthiest overhand punches you'll ever see. But I don't believe that you just look at the result and that tells the whole story. If you go back and watch the fight, Volkan has a lot of success, and it's the way he throws his punches. It's almost like he leans his shoulder and then his punch loops around afterwards. It's a really unique way of throwing his shots, and I don't think that beats the top level guys because, again, when he is dedicating himself to those strikes, he's going to leave his chin open, and the top tier strikers in the division will probably be able to counter him on the inside, similar to what Yuri was able to do. But I think there's a world where if he can leg kick Ankalaev enough, limit some of that movement, and limit some of Ankalaev's own kicks, I think Oezdemir could open up some of those big punches later on.
Austin saying over there in the comments section, Volkan rocked Yuri, and Superboy saying Oezdemir isn't Kutsalaba. 100%, exactly. Because Volkan has staying power as the fight goes on, which, again, no time, and they were quick wins, and the poster over there, it's what? 15-second knockout that he did have, and, you can't see it, but we've got the Anthony Smith Volkan Oezdemir poster over there in the corner. But yeah, when you look at it for Oezdemir, lunging in with your shoulder out, throwing weird kind of angles at guys, especially guys that hold a high guard, it's a great way to land a lot of good punches. He did a great job against Anthony Smith when it was up against the cage. Anthony Smith just happens to be tougher than a $2 steak, which some people wondered where we got that reference.
J.R. Smith, show some respect.
Not J.R. Smith.
Isn't it?
Not J.R. Smith.
Oh, goodness, not J.R. Smith. Wait, you mean the golfer for, the University of North Carolina?
Exactly. But it's a hockey reference. It's all over the place. But yeah, when you look at this fight, Ankalaev, much more technical striker. His only loss is that weird one to Paul Craig where he thought, you know what?
See,
let's party.
I think we need to talk about that, though, because I'm somebody who's brought up the hard issues of who fought Ricci last week? Maria
Oliveira.
Okay.
Jim Ross.
We called her a quitter, and Makwan Amirkhani, I've called him out for quitting too. That's the one thing about Ankalaev I don't like at all. His loss to Paul Craig is a big, big loss in my mind, because he had that fight won, and with 1 second left, Your corner has to be able to tell you and communicate that effectively to you. There's something missing for you to tap out of a fight with 1 second left.
Yeah, Justin Franks, it was you in the comments section. That was a callback over there. And it was a good question, too. But yeah, it was Jim Ross, and I tried to get it out of Matt, and he went with J.R. Smith.
Sorry, Jim Ross.
Playoff legend.
I love J.R.
But yeah, when we're looking at this one, Matt, in terms of the odds, again, you've got the favorite being Ankalaev. And this is a trend for the entire pay-per-view. So if you're thinking of going with an underdog, it's really chalky. Ankalaev open to minus 290, he's a minus 328 right now. And if you go with Volkan Oezdemir, open to plus 235, he's a plus 257. If we have a look at Fight Night picks for this one, let's see. It's not close at all. 88% Ankalaev. I've got Ankalaev here. Had him at the start. Still have him now.
I do too, unless he just gets caught by a massive shot early on. And hey, these are guys who weigh well over 200 pounds. They're primary strikers. Anybody can land a big shot. I do like Ankalaev. I think he's a more technical guy, and he's the more long-range striker of the two.
All right, Matt, moving to our next fight, and I'm sure this one's going to be contentious in the comments section because it is. You got to toss a like. You got to toss a like because we have the return of Khamzat Chimaev, Towelgate 2.0. He ended up successfully weighing in at 171. Li Jingliang is a professional. He didn't need the towel. He didn't need to hold on for dear life. And these guys looked fit and ready. Matt, did you think that Khamzat looked a little gaunt on the scale?
I did. There's been a lot this week that I just haven't loved out of Khamzat Chimaev, and I've just sort of gone back, and I actually made a list. I regret not bringing it with me, but it was all the things that Chimaev did well in his first little run in the UFC, and it was
everything.
He was active, though, and that was the first thing that came out to me. It was the fact that he has had so many fights in such a short amount of time. I hate the layoff, and I don't like the whole what weight class are you thing. I know sometimes we talk about how that's a positive, but normally that's only a positive after a guy's made his way up into the rankings. He's a very young fighter who maybe has lost a few fights and, they don't really know if they're going to still grow or not. With Chimaev, it feels like after every single fight, it's okay. Are you a middleweight or are you a welterweight? And I do feel like at a certain point, he's going to have troubles making that 175-pound weight limit. If in the back of his mind, he's always
175.
Sorry, 170-pound weight limit. If in the back of his mind, he's always thinking, okay, my next fight could be a middleweight, or I could just jump up for a short notice fight at middleweight.
He's talked about it this week. 170 is the play.
And if it's the play, then let's get better at cutting weight, because I didn't like the whole towel thing. I don't like how aggro he's been all. It's been very odd from Chimaev. I don't like the layoff more than anything, and I do think that that's what had to do with him. I don't want to say missing weight, but having those weigh-in troubles. I just think when you've taken that much time off and you haven't gone through the whole process of weight cutting, he just may have had a bad weight cut. And if you have a bad weight cut, it means your cardio might be compromised, and so could your chin. Those are two things I want compromised if you're fighting a guy like Li Jingliang, who can fight with a crazy pace, who has tremendous power, and who is just such an unorthodox fighter in his own right.
Stays in the fights, and if you want the big wins, Santiago Ponzinibbio beating him by knockout, beating Eliseo Zaleski, those ones hold water. Bub Collins saying Khamzat for the smash, brother. Let's get into it. Matt, when we look at this one, at Fight Night Picks for the votes, I don't anticipate they're going to be close. 81% with Chimaev, but that's it. When you're cutting that much, and again, yeah, Clay brings up a good point. Maybe Chimaev is putting on a show, caused a little bit of doubt. That could be true. We look at the odds. I said a lot of them are chalky. A lot of them are favorite heavy on this main card. Chimaev open to minus 260, is a minus 594 or thereabouts on best fight odds. For Li Jingliang, open to plus 210, plus 426. I like Chimaev because Li Jingliang's takedown defense throughout his UFC career hasn't been great. He's got 6 bonuses on his record. And that Jake Matthews fight, I saw it up there earlier on, talking about the fact that, yeah, was it dirty? Yeah, it was dirty. You don't fishhook a guy in the eye, but that was a fight of the night. Kind of crazy. And there was a lot of back and forth. I love this fight. But again, you talk about the takedown defense, and Justin Franks is saying it's like, what, 46%? I think it's 59%. I want to make sure I get it right. So let's see. 59% takedown defense. That's also his striking defense number, which is crazy. But yeah, I like Khamzat in this fight to take it to the mat. But I'm sure that Li Jingliang has been training his takedown defense for a long time with a guy like Yaozong.
These are going to be my only points about this fight. Now, yes, I have Chimaev to win. I think he's going to win probably via finish because he is that kind of a special talent. Li Liang is game, though. And I do think gameness is a factor you have to take into consideration in this fight.
His head?
Because, just let me finish this point. Because when Khamzat Chimaev fought Gerald Meerschaert, you could tell Meerschaert bought into the hype of Chimaev. He backed up immediately and ate one punch and went down. Because he was so stiff when he ate that shot because of the nerves from the fight. I don't think Li Liang is going to beat himself before he gets into the cage. I think Li Liang is 100% confident in his ability to win this fight. And I think he's going to do what my favorite game plan is when you fight a primary wrestler, and it's, hey, if I'm gonna get taken down, let's just try throwing strikes anyways. I think if you bring the fight to Chimaev, that's the only way you're gonna figure out how to beat him, because if you just let him tee up power shots and go for takedown attempts, you're never gonna face any resistance throughout the fight. I think if Li Liang can just start this fight really aggressively and get off to a good start, it's gonna really help him as the fight progresses, but I do have Chimaev in the end.
Phoenix brings up a good point in the comment section about Chimaev destroying his lungs. I have no idea what capacity they're at. Again, Eduardo Rodriguez missed the 2020 MLB season, came back for 2021. Didn't look like he did in 2019 when he was one of the best pitchers in the AL, and he had myocarditis before and missed the whole season.
And then Jaylen Brown went from having it a week ago, and then the next week he scored 40 in a game. Like, it's so weird how it affects people. It's really hard to say, this person got COVID, so now I don't know.
Yeah, I have a really hard time. So with this one, ultimately, the kind of bit of wisdom that I have is probably stay away from it, because minus 600 odds on a guy that has so many question marks. Do you feel confident with it? I don't. I don't. I really don't. I like Chimaev in the fight, but I'm not that confident and that chalky of a favorite. And I see Li Liang as one of the more attractive options as an underdog on this main card.
So I guess my question for you is, if Chimaev is able to win this fight, does this immediately put him back to where he was before the layoff? Or do you think
100%.
he needs... Okay, perfect.
You're beating a top 15 guy.
And just, to me, Li Liang doesn't feel like you beat him, now you get Leon Edwards. Personally, I would like to see them build him up the way they're supposed to after this win. If Chimaev does win, put him at number 12 or 11 and force him to work his way up the rankings. That's all.
Yeah, Joe's saying stay away. It's a pop and popcorn fight. 100% it is. So Matt, we'll move into our next fight.
Ooh.
Alexander Volkov's taking on Marcin Tybura. And Matt, for Tybura, this is a guy that we've talked about glowingly even when he was in the darkest depths of his career, because when the bare bones are there, what can Tybura do? Friggin' eat a shot. I can tell you that much. March guys down. My favorite fight that he had, and it was a bad fight for his opponent in that fight, and the cards were stacked against him, but when he took on Russia's, and Matt, who am I going with? 205 pounders.
Oh, Max Grecian.
Max Grecian. What do you say in that fight? It's almost like Chimaev Jingliang. What's Max got to do? Unload, unleash, and become a striker. Tybura just walked him down, took him down, and fought a Tybura fight. So if you're looking for a highlight reel where, the cards were stacked against the opponent, that's probably the fight. But look at what Tybura did in his last fight. Look at what he's done on this run. You beat Greg Hardy the way that he did. That's a signature Tybura win where you're going to gain a lot of fans. For Volkov, he's gained fans where he gets a devil on his back and he gains like
that samurai's
20
wild.
pounds. Both guys weighed in 2 pounds under what they did their last time out. So for Tybura, I think it was 261. He's 259. For Volkov, it was 265. It's 263. Whatever the guys played around with the scale, it doesn't matter to me. Both guys are thick and they're fight ready. But big time Volkov's a tricky guy. I don't know if he's going to lay an egg. He's got to let his hands fly. He's got to be confident in his abilities. Obviously, you can stand in a mirror when you're fighting Cyril Gahn. And he landed some good shots on that one. But he didn't win, so we'll see. Codizzle says winner and loser get cut. I hope you're not talking about this fight. Come on now. I'm really eager to see what versions of these guys we get. Because for Tybura, is it going to be quick and early with the takedowns, or does he wait until like the second round? I think that could be to his detriment.
260-pound Volkov was built to beat guys like Marcin Tybura, and I'm one of the biggest Tybura believers out there. I thought he was going to beat Walt Harris. He did. I thought he was going to beat Greg Hardy, and luckily he did. Now, did I think he was going to go out there and just like get these dominant finishes over those guys? I certainly didn't, but it's been really nice to see just the career progression out of Marcin Tybura, because a lot of people forget. It's kind of like when Masvidal got famous for his second time after the Darren Till win. People forgot that he was in a UFC title eliminator against Damian Maia not that long before. It's not like he was some unknown commodity and then became famous. With Marcin Tybura, this shouldn't be a surprise if you've been paying attention for a long time. He had a main event slot against Fabricio Verdum down in Australia. I believe it was like 2017. It was a while ago now. It's just Marcin Tybura is not just all of a sudden this new talent who's gone on a winning streak. He's had his ups, he's had his downs, and that's what I like about Marcin Tybura. I know where I'm at with him. I know what he excels at, and I do know the types of fighters he struggles with. And the types of fighters he struggles with are the ones who have a lot of range, who can outstrike him on the feet and who can defend his takedown attempts. Now, could 240-pound Volkov be susceptible to getting taken down? Yes, he could have. But this new, heavier Volkov has tremendous takedown defense, really good movement on the feet, and I just think stylistically, this is probably Tabora's hardest matchup in the top 15.
I've seen him work with Nikolai Negumereanu as well, as far as the wrestling goes, but over in the comments section, Adam Riley saying, will there be a Joshua Hart betting guide? It's in the preview section at FightNightPicks.com, a link down below in the description, and when you're going down that way, you can hit the like. Justin Franks wants you to, and I want you to as well, and he's saying that you're reading his mind, so that's a little scary, but Matt, when we do look at this one, Bundle of Humble saying Tybura needs at least a takedown every round to keep him down for a decision. I just don't see it. He needs a finish. Marcin Tybura, a lot of fun fights. Stefan Struve, anyone?
The thing about the Stefan Struve fight was that he just moves forward and backwards a lot in that fight, and that's really my issue with Marcin Tybura. This is what sets Ciryl Gane apart and why he's the heavyweight champion. He moves left and right. I know that sounds really simple, but in the heavyweight division, nobody does it other than like Stipe Miocic, Alexander Volkov to a certain degree, and Ciryl Gane. With Marcin Tybura, it's a lot of that forward and backwards movement, and when you're fighting someone like Volkov, who can just start going downhill with his combinations, like, if Marcin Tybura is moving backwards at all in this fight, Volkov's gonna hit him with a 12-punch combo and probably put him away.
I mean, listen, at Fight Night Picks for this one, 78% have Mr. Volkov to get the win, and if we look at the odds for this fight, again, I can't stress it enough, it's a chalky card. Volkov open minus 210, minus 306 right now. Tybura open plus 180, plus 243 right now. Bundle of Humble hit us up in the super chat. Appreciate you. If you want to help out the boys, hit up that super chat all darn day. But I saw Die Hard MMA podcast, saw Clint, one of his biggest plays this week was Volkov for this fight. I like Volkov in this fight. Again, there's a clear path to victory for Tybura, and if it happens, it's like every Tybura fight pretty well.
This is my big thing about Alexander Volkov. Nobody has been able to land a clean shot on Ciryl Gane up until Alexander Volkov. It just didn't happen. That means that you must set yourself apart in some way. Like, Gane has great footwork, and he moves really well on the outside. Marcin Tybura doesn't at all, and that's why it's going to be his
Derek
downfall.
D's got to elaborate, saying that Tybura is like the Jakob Pertl of MMA.
Jakob Pertl might make an all-defensive team this year, which is wild.
Just long and rangy and sketchy. Matt, Islam Makhachev taking on Dan Hooker on short notice. Islam lurking in the shadows like actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf. He's got an interesting fight coming up, and we can make spooky, scary skeleton references all week. Werewolves Within, probably my favorite movie of 2021 in terms of those spooky movies with Sam Richardson, who's in I Think You Should Leave. Good. I haven't seen it yet. Carlos hitting us up in the super chat saying, love the picks, guys. Keep up the great work and have a great day. I appreciate that from you, Carlos. I hope you have a great day, too. I hope everybody does. But yeah, when we look at this one, all spooky references aside, Dan Hooker training out of Syndicate MMA for a little bit while he stayed in the States with guys like Sean Strickland. And Matt, he's got a tough fight against Islam Makhachev, and that's all I can say.
Dan Hooker does all the things well that we really like when we look at a fighter who's fighting a primary wrestler.
Ray hitting us up in the super chat saying, I'm running out of time heading to a motor vehicle accident. What's the parlay before I go? I had the over 1.5 rounds in the first fight on the card. I had over 1.5 rounds in the second fight on the card. That's what I'm going with.
Hopefully have a great day, Ray. Have a great day at the fights. This thing about this fight, Dan Hooker does everything we really like when we look at a fighter who's about to fight a primary wrestler. Does he have defensive submissions? Yeah, he does. He's got a great guillotine. He is good at fighting off his back. Does he throw really good techniques up the middle? Yeah, that's what Dan Hooker's known for. He's got uppercuts. He's got knees. Like, right now, Dan Hooker at least has a few of those, like, really good techniques where if he lands one of them, it will probably put Islam out. The issue is that I just see Islam winning this fight until he doesn't. And I know that's an easy thing to say, but unless Dan Hooker is able to get off one of those massive techniques where it is, I get you on like pulling guard with a guillotine, which is going to be hard to do against a guy like Islam Makhachev if you've ever seen him grapple. Or, I hit him with a knee up the middle as he's going for a takedown. Other than one of those very, very specific situations, this is a hard night in the office for Dan Hooker. Again, I'm going to say this. It's not like Dan Hooker's going to beat himself before this fight. I'm assuming he has incredible self-belief, and that's what you need when you're about to fight someone like Islam Makhachev. I just think Islam has that wrestling that's so dominant in this division that until he fights somebody like a Gregor Gillespie who can at least keep up a little bit with his wrestling, he's going to be able to use that one tool to just beat the majority of the fighters in this division.
He's probably not going to, unless he loses this fight, he's not going to have to fight Gregor Gillespie.
Right.
And if you look at it, 73% of of the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram in the story have Makhachev to get the win, 27% on Dan Hooker. If we look at the odds over on Best Fight Odds, we pull out the average for this one, incredibly skewed towards Makhachev, who opened to minus 300. He's a minus 598 right now. He's the biggest mover and shaker on the card. Hooker opened to plus 250. He's a plus 426. Over there in the comments section, Matt, let's see. Benny B is saying Hooker. Tyler Peltier saying everybody wants Dan to win, but Islam's a great fighter. And for Islam, hey, for every Islam, there's an Adriano Martins every now and again. That was a wild, wild knockout win. I don't know if we're going to see that. Makhachev's got that work rate. He's got that 5-round cardio. He beat a guy who's already good with takedown defense and submission abilities to the nth degree, and a guy in Thiago Moises. So for me, can Hooker defend some takedowns? Possibly. And if he defends enough of them, you really are able to strike at range with a guy like Makhachev, which is easier said than done because other than Martins, which was early, nobody else has done it, has been able to do it. I have Makhachev in this one, but man, the deck is stacked up against Dan Hooker.
I'm going to say this, though, because this is something I just thought about that Dan Hooker can have a lot of success in. What was the best thing Dan Hooker did against Dustin Poirier? Leg kicks. Just kick him in the calf. If you can eliminate one of Islam's legs so he can't push off for his takedowns, you're not really going to have to worry about the wrestling aspect of his game. And I understand, when you throw kicks, it does open up the chance to get taken down, but it's going to be one of those volatile techniques where if you can rack up enough of them, it's going to diminish his wrestling, but it's also going to open up the chance of getting taken down. And I think Dan Hooker's going to have to play one of those games where it's that high risk, high reward.
All right, Matt, we move into our co-main event of the evening. Did I change the graphic? You're darn tootin' I did. We have Petr Yan taking on Corey Sandhagen. I threw this one out there in the YouTube community tab, and I asked for, what's your possible fight of the night, so on and so forth. This got the large majority of the votes, and everybody that hit us up on Instagram said that they had this as a possible fight of the night. I think this is such a great one. Both guys, not necessarily clash of styles, it's just they do things differently, and they excel in the same areas. I mean, let's go with Petr Yan to start. What's he great at? High guard, great boxing stance. He can rip to the body. He can throw nice kicks. He can switch stances. Corey Sandhagen, what can he do? He can switch stances, but he throws a lot more long-range bombs, and his overall striking game is totally different, but both guys excel in those areas, and when it goes to the mat, Corey Sandhagen, I mean, could he beat Yuri Alcantara? Yeah.
He was in some dicey situation.
Corey Sandhagen, when he began his UFC career, got hit a lot and got in some, compromising positions. Look at his fight against Mario Bautista. He gets absolutely rocked, and then he comes back and he does very well. John Lineker, same thing. When we look at this fight, Matt, for Petr Yan, does he have enough time in a 3-round fight to download a game plan to get moving?
5-round fight.
5-round fight. Does he have enough time? Yeah, 100% he does. So, is he going to give up the first round and maybe even the second round? That's the question, because against a guy like Sandhagen, when he starts rolling, it's like that wheel of cheese in England. We're going, and somebody's going to get hurt, and there could be major injuries.
So you brought up the stance switching, so that's what I'll address first. They both switch stances, but they do it in a very different way. Corey Sandhagen is much more fluid with his stance switching, where he's never really in any stance. He'll be square to you. He just moves his feet a lot. With Petr Yan, he's more set, and he'll stay in that position for a little while. It's not like with Yan, he'll throw, and then immediately switch, throw. He'll just fight as a natural southpaw for minutes at a time, and then he'll fight as a natural orthodox fighter for minutes at a time. It is really unique to see, just because most fighters, when they switch stances, are more like Corey Sandhagen, where they will, I'll throw a few more techniques from this stance than I will from the other one. But with Yan, it is a little bit more, I can genuinely fight like an actual southpaw. The thing about this fight is both guys' defensive capabilities, and I'm really glad that you brought up the fact that Corey Sandhagen early on in his UFC career, and I'll even say up until this point, he is one of the more hittable fighters in the top ranks of any division, I'd say. Like, Corey Sandhagen's not known as a guy who goes in and gets out really quick, other than his one fight against Frankie Edgar, and that was with surgical precision.
Poor Marlon.
I guess the Marlon fight, too. That's a good point. I completely forgot about that. Other than those two performances, he has got hit a lot. The John Lineker fight is the one that I want to bring up, because John Lineker doesn't throw kicks, similar to Petr Yan, is a very boxing-heavy fighter, similar to Petr Yan, and has incredible power in his hands and a really good chin. All things that are similar to Yan. Sandhagen did have success early on in that fight, throwing his knees, and every time Lineker would move forward, Sandhagen would just bring his knee up and meet him, knee on stomach every single time. Just make it hard for you to create or close that distance. I think Jan's a much more intelligent fighter than John Lineker is, and he'll be able to set up his entries a lot better. But the thing about Lineker is that even in the third round of his fight against Sandhagen, he cracks Sandhagen with, I think it's an overhand left, hurts him, gets him in a guillotine, and the bell stops the fight. Like, Corey Sandhagen has blood gushing out of his nose and is in dire straits. And if that fight is 10 seconds longer, Lineker has a real opportunity to submit Corey Sandhagen. I'm just saying, once I've seen you be in compromising positions from guys like Yuri Alcantara, John Lineker, I think Petr Yan's going to have a lot of success in this fight. And I know Corey Sandhagen is a guy who has improved an incredible amount throughout his last, I'd say even like 2 years of his career. I just don't think he's been able to bridge the gap between him and Petr Yan.
I want my MTV. When I look at this for Sandhagen, the losses are to Sterling incredibly quickly, and that just really cemented Sterling as, okay, this guy's not like a lifer, somebody that's just hanging around. This guy's championship material. And he lost his fight by split decision. And for Yan, obviously he was winning until he wasn't. The illegal knee, DQ. And listen, some people weren't happy with me saying that, I don't like two fighters coming off of losses for a title fight.
I'm cool with those.
I don't like two guys coming off of losses for a title fight. Two guys coming off a loss this high up in the card as a number one contender fight. Sure, just weird that a belt's attached to it. But again, I love the fight. It'd be ridiculous to say that I don't.
Make that money, son.
I think this one is very, very fun. Justin Franks is saying Petr is a serious bad guy. I'm really rooting for Corey. Dan is saying, Craig, you should sing on every show. He's pretty quick to that Dire Straits reference. And maybe I should. It's very poor. But when we look at the odds for this one, yeah, Petr is a decent favorite. Open to minus 300, minus 228 right now. For Sandhagen, open a plus 250. He's a plus 185. Brandon Dick hitting us up in the super chat saying for the falsetto. I don't know, singing from a hole in the wall. Petr, 67% of the fans have him to win, 33% Sandhagen, or as the man himself, our own John Franklin would say, Sandhagen. MMA DFS saying, Craig, they hurt their opponents enough to make them unable to compete. Matt, looking at this one, I've got Petr Yan. I think a 5-round fight benefits him. Although, yeah, for Sandhagen, he did great in his last fight. He turned his uptick in volume as the fight went on. In certain rounds, you'd have to go back and watch it. I thought that Dillashaw was able to win. I thought Sandhagen won 3 of those rounds. But when it comes to a fight against Yan, unless he gets caught in some tricky submission and he can't get himself out of it, I think he has a great opportunity to win. And I'm so excited that we actually have a fight companion to do this fight because Craig Allan fight fan, if I put that hat on, like this is my favorite fight now. Now that Mustafayev
is way better than
Mustafayev Ismagulov, I'm a number one fan of this fight. I absolutely love it.
This fight's going to be incredible. And this is the last thing I have to bring up about Petr Yan because I have to mention it every time he fights. If you're fighting Petr Yan, don't throw a lot of volume because you're showing him your tricks before you have to. It's like when NBA teams play each other early in the season and they know they're going to get matched up in the playoffs. They don't start half their starters. They don't run any plays. They basically take the game off. It's like when Milwaukee played Miami early in the season and they lost by 40. It's because you don't want that team to know all of your tricks early on. That's the same thing when you're fighting a guy like Petr Yan. He's so intelligent in the cage. It's that everything you throw at him, it's like, okay, now I know how to do this. I've got your timing down on all this. Corey Sandhagen needs a lot of volume to then find his power throughout a fight, and I think you're just giving Petr Yan the keys to your game plan.
Here comes Bismack Biyombo, your starter at center in the preseason match in the main event. If you like it, you toss a like. Jan Blachowicz taking on Glover Teixeira, and I saw a graphic out there today from MMA Junkie. It was, the oldest combined ages in a title fight, and the biggest one was Bisping when he fought Dan Henderson. It was 83 years. 80 years if you combine these two, and happy birthday Glover Teixeira a couple of days ago. He has a tough fight coming up against Jan Blachowicz, and this is Glover's first title appearance since UFC 172 when he took on that guy from New Mexico. So when I look at this fight, Matt, Jan Blachowicz, absolute head of steam. Glover, absolute head of steam. And the way that these guys win, blood and guts and heart, and they really put everything together when they make that walk to the octagon. I doubt that these guys feel an ounce of nerves when they walk in. It's just like, yep, been here before. Time to go out and do my thing. Angles for both of these guys, talk about guys moving side to side. Not as much. A little more square, a little bit more herky-jerky. That's what makes this fight so much fun because you can expect one in a phone booth here coming up today.
Rick Yones, I'm glad to hear everything is okay with the motor vehicle accident. That's good. I'm glad everything's good. This is a really fun fight, though. And it is weird because neither guy you look at and you think, oh, that's the UFC champion. Like, Jan Blachowicz is kind of stiff. None of his techniques really jump out of the page. And you're like, wow, he's like a Yair Rodriguez type of a talent, or like a Max Holloway, where it's like, what they do, you never think in a trillion years you'd be able to. With Jan Blachowicz, it's a lot of, I don't want to say basic techniques because they are really high-level techniques. It's a lot of 1-2 kick, 1-2 kick, be sound defensively, 1-2 kick. The cool thing about Blachowicz, though, is once he does start to unwind with his hands, he's really good at punching around the guard of his opponent. Go back and watch the Dominic Reyes fight. And I don't often do this. Pat myself on the back, though. I had Jan Blachowicz to win that fight by knockout, and I was pretty confident going into that, hey, I had really liked what I had seen out of the progression of Jan Blachowicz throughout his career, and this is the problem with Blachowicz. I thought he was going to lose badly to Israel Adesanya, too, so I can't really say I have a great read on him, because I believed in him up until that point, and then he even surprised me. But this is what I'll say about Jan. He's extremely, extremely sound defensively. Guys who rely on volume even have a really hard time hitting him clean in fights. So when you're a guy like Glover Teixeira, who really does use his combinations, but he's primarily a power puncher, I think he's going to have a hard time landing that big powering shot. And the last time we saw Jan in trouble on the feet was against Thiago Santos, where it was a really close fight. Neither guy threw a lot of volume. And then the one time Jan did overextend himself, Thiago Santos was able to counter him on the back foot. I think Jan has learned a lot, and I think that performance was a really important performance for Blachowicz to have because it was his first UFC main event. It was a big opportunity. It was in Europe. That was just a really big chance for Blachowicz. And the fact that he did come up short in that fight, I think sort of springboarded him throughout this other run in his career. If you look at the strikes he's able to land off of the initiation of clinching like he was able to do against Luke Rockhold, if you look at his striking on the inside, if you look at his takedown defense, Jan Blachowicz really is a championship level fighter, and I don't think Glover has any one talent that he can go out there and just overwhelm Blachowicz with.
You don't think he's grappling?
I don't, because from what we've seen out of Jan Blachowicz, Glover Teixeira had a split decision with Nikita Krylov where a lot of their fight was grappling. And listen, Nikita Krylov's a hard guy to look good against, unless you finish him brutally, which has happened, but still, Glover and Krylov had a lot of 50-50 grappling exchanges, and I don't like playing MMA math, but if you look at what Jan Blachowicz was able to do to Krylov, it did give a lot of confidence to me going into this fight.
Well, over in the comments section, Joe is saying Jan is just a monster. Pablo is saying, I really hope Glover takes this. He deserves it. Adam Audi saying, greetings from Amsterdam. How's it going? I had the whole Sausalito Summer Night thing last week with Voodoo, who I'm sure is out there in the comments section because I saw him out there earlier. And you European fans, you're in for a good one because you actually get to go to bed at a normal time. And for us, we get to wake up early, which is nice because you actually get a Saturday night. So Matt, when we're looking at this one at Fight Night Picks for the votes, 80% with Jan Blachowicz to 20% with Glover Teixeira. Jan is, of course, the favorite. I did see an Chavo over there, which is a great throwback. A guy who wrestled in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada at one point. Glover open at a plus 165. He's plus 237 right now. Jan open to minus 190, minus 295 as it goes now. And Craig is saying Hezbollah versus Rosic prediction. When's the fight going to happen? Because I've been promised this fight for a long time. I saw that guy hold them apart when they were trying to kick each other. Benny B hitting us up in the super chat saying appreciate the work you guys put in weekly. Matt, in this fight, I have the man himself, Jan Blachowicz, to get the win. Could he get caught? Again, these guys move in straight lines, and if Glover's walking forward, throwing those, you talked about it, the Volkan Oezdemir shoulder punch of a hook, maybe he's able to land because we've seen Jan on the back foot. Thiago Santos, a great opportunity. And for Glover up against the cage, Jan hitting him, holding him up. Can Glover work his takedowns? We'll have to see, but this is such a high-level fight between a couple of guys that have great fight IQ, even though, again, did Glover get hit clean by Thiago? Yes, but the fight IQ led him to the win that he ended up getting, if you can kind of follow along with my logic. These guys have really seen everything. I like Jan in this fight, but man, this is a great one, and it could happen 21. Craig and Matt, who are you being for Halloween? I don't have a costume picked out yet.
Yeah, I might hang out with some friends as Matthew Allan, but that'd be about it.
Well, we got to do fight picks. But still, I'm going to wear my hockey gear maybe. I did that one night as a sober driver at a bunch of different bars. My wife in the other room can probably hear me say this, and people were banging me in the head and they're hitting me in the shoulders. It was annoying. So, yeah, in this one, I've got Blachowicz. You?
I like Blachowicz in this. This is the thing. If both guys boxing are, let's just say, comparable, I understand Glover's probably the better pure boxer, but still, both guys' hands are similar. Jan throws a wide variety of kicks, and that's just not something that's really in Glover's game. So if Jan get his kicks going from range, it's going to make Glover's job that much harder to connect with his punches on the outside. So I like Jan quite a bit, and hopefully the winner of this just gets some respect, though. It feels like Jan, not that he's a star by any means, but he's getting a little bit of pop. People are excited to see him as champ. So hopefully both guys, no matter who wins this fight, is able to build a little bit from this, because these are two of the good guys in MMA. It was Glover's birthday yesterday. Jan brought him some beer. He was like, this is the best beer in Poland. I hope you enjoy it. It was a nice build-up.
The question there from Al Snow, will you guys ever go to the UFC press conferences? We have. when nobody's watching back in 2018. If we can travel successfully, we will. And somebody said the fights start in about 20 minutes. They start at 11:30 our time, which is almost 45 minutes from now. So, Matt, when we move in, let's go back all the way up and down through. If you didn't toss a like, we would appreciate it, because normally we average about 300 and we're at 181 right now. It takes 2 seconds. Matt, all the way back down to the bottom. I don't have a lot of confidence in this one. I don't know Tagir Ulanbekov's path up the top 15. I think he's going to have a rough go against a lot of guys. Honest to goodness, I know he's ranked 15th at the start of the week. Allan Nascimento is a very good fighter. Good opportunity for him to automatically get a win, and then he's in the rankings too. So it's like hey, it's like that Spider-Man meme. Like, I have a hard time with this one. I'm going Ulanbekov, but one of the underdogs I could see winning is Nascimento, so hopefully that's enough red flags there, but I have Ulanbekov here.
I like Ulanbekov in this. This is more of a stylistic problem for Nascimento than anything.
Yaozong taking on Nascimento, and actually I should go back. Yaozong's not taking on Nascimento. No. I have the over 1.5 rounds in this fight as the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay that goes into this fight. Over 1.5 rounds in this one as well. Second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. We get it out of the way early. It's a plus 109 if you go with those two, the way that I had done it. But Matt, Yoshan taking on Petrovsky. Petrovsky doesn't have a great gas tank. Yaozong does, up at heavyweight and at light heavyweight. Will it translate at middleweight? I think it will, because he's been out for quite some time. He's let his body adjust to this weight class, and you see how big and fit and ready he is. But at 3-2, it's such a sketchy record, and the question marks I have for him with the wrestling defense against a guy that's so well schooled in Petroski, I like Petroski in this fight.
You brought it up, question marks. That's really the story of this fight. Petroski could go out there, get a knockout in 3 seconds, and we'd all be like, wow, this is a serious contender. Or Zhang could go out, look like a genuinely terrifying wrestler at this weight class, and just physically overwhelm Petroski. And I could see either version of that fight happening. I did say before I wouldn't put any money on this fight. I know you've got in the FNP parlay. Just personally for me, I've got too many question marks about Yaozong, but I do like Petroski.
So I'm just going, see how these two are really big question marks, but I like them to go later. Again, guys losing by decision, so on and so forth. Ignorant MMA saying take a shot if somebody comes out to Island Boys. Matt, can you sing it?
No, I'm good.
All right, Makwan Amirkhani taking on Lerone Murphy. Absolutely love this fight. And for me, I've got England's Lerone Murphy to get the win.
Is Edson Barbosa too high in the rankings for next? Because he's coming off a loss. I guess that was the main event. This is my point. I think Lerone Murphy's that guy. I really do think he's going to have a number next to his name sooner rather than later. And I think he's going to be a real player in the weight class, too. I don't think he's just going to be one of those guys who, he's ranked 14th this week, and then you check the rankings 2 weeks later and he's gone even though nothing really happened. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys. I think he'll be a genuine player at featherweight, so I like Murphy a lot in this matchup.
All right, Matt. Next one, we have Chamill Gamzatov taking on Michał Olashaychuk. Matt, were we split on this pick at the start of the week?
No, we both had Gamsatov. Now, I brought up a lot of reasons for why Olashaychuk can win this fight. I just don't think he's going to. I think he overextends himself a little bit too much on his shots. I do think Gamsatov will be able to get the takedown.
This is another underdog that you might want to consider in Olashaychuk. I see this fight as 50-50. I'll go with the grappling out of Gamsatov, but again, not a ton of confidence in that one. If somebody rips me to shreds in the comments section, it's on you at that point. It would be the first time. Yeah, it would be on you at that point. I'm not, it's water off a duck's back at this point. I've got Gamsatov here as well. Matt, Zaleski dos Santos taking on Benoit Saint-Denis out of France, coming out of the Venom Training Center. There's only 3 in the world. One's in Japan, one's in the States, one is in France. And for Benoit, one of the most impressive guys I've seen coming into the UFC lately. We had a lot of good prospects that might not have come out on the winning end.
We say this every time, Craig.
No, I'm dead serious. I think Benoit's going to be around for a very long time, and I like him as a fighter. I think his striking is going to struggle against Zaleski. But if Benoit goes out there in the first round, takes down Zaleski, gets his back, gets a submission or ground and pound win, I wouldn't be like, wow, where'd this guy come from? So for me, I do like Zaleski because Benoit starts with his hands low, and as the fight goes on, he really slows down and his hands get even lower. Great opportunity for Zaleski to get a win. I like Zaleski in this one. Laos Nana saying the rise of France in the UFC. Bring back Tom Duquesnoy.
Saint-Denis' hands go from waist level to knee level. It's not like he starts with them up here and then they slowly come down. It's just really concerning when you're fighting a guy like Dos Santos who can throw such a wide variety of strikes. And the thing about Zaleski Dos Santos, I don't know why I'm struggling with that so much today, is that he can play the volume game and he can play the power game. And I think if he gets off to a good lead early on, he's going to be able to damage Saint-Denis enough to really hurt him to win a decision. So I like Dos Santos in this matchup, and I do think he'll be able to get back on track. I don't know if he'll ever be able to get back into the rankings. Honestly, Honestly, I'll just say now, I don't think he will be able to get back into the rankings. I think we're seeing sort of a post-prime, if you will, Dos Santos, but I still think this is a guy who could have a lot of really fun fights in that like 25 to 15 range. If Daniel Rodriguez fought Zaleski Dos Santos, you have no idea how excited I would be. Like, there's a lot of those matchups out there at 170 that would be very fun fights moving forward.
Bailey Riplinger, I could care less about the old BKFC. I do not care.
I'm not a fan of it. I've watched it and it's not great.
No, it's just a bunch of fighters who weren't good at other stuff going at it. Matt, Albert Duraev taking on Roman Kopylov. It is such a good fight, Matt. I think it's going to be great because, again, this is a perfect litmus test as to where these guys are at. Kopylov used to be a top prospect, lost one fight, went away for a long time. Here's your opportunity to get back in the realm of public relevance. For Albert Duraev, prove it to me how good you were with ACB and that win on Dana White's Contender Series when you were minus 400 favorite wasn't just, padding the stats and padding the record. So I really do like this fight. I have Duraev to get the win. I think the takedowns are going to be the difference. Kopylov could piece him up on the feet, pop that jab out there, really work it, throw some nice kicks. But I like Duraev in this fight. I can't wait for this one, though.
I have a question for you about Duraev then, I guess. What, version of him do you think we'll see in the UFC? Do you think this is someone whose skills will translate really well?
I think he's going to go out there balls to the wall like Bruno Silva.
I think he's going to win, too. It's always a really interesting question mark of how will this champion from another organization look in the UFC? Because sometimes they don't really look like the same fighter when they come over, and sometimes they look exactly like the version that we always thought they were. So I guess that was my question. I think Duraev's going to win. But I just wondered if you had any hesitations about octagon jitters or anything like that.
Matthew Campbell saying, what better than Craig and Matt for breakfast? Are you going to eat me?
No. We're like coffee, though. We wake you up.
There'd be a lot of people disagreeing with you, Matthew, but I appreciate it either way. Matt, Ricardo Ramos taking on Zubaira Tukhugov. I have a hard time with this one. I like Tukhugov with the motor that he has. I see him as an Energizer Bunny. Takedown, takedown, takedown. Who has the better finishing abilities? Well, it's definitely not Zubaira Tukhugov. It's Ramos for sure. But I'm going with Tukhugov in this one. If I got proven wrong, it's going to be exciting and fun.
With Ramos, there's a version out there who turns into Charles Oliveira, goes on a crazy run, gets his striking and jiu-jitsu together, and is a terrifying fighter. It's just, I feel like his game's kind of like Swiss cheese. There's holes in it, and there's ways he can take advantage of Ramos' game. You can take him down and not be that worried about the submission. A lot of his submission abilities come from him in top position and not from him off of his back. So I think if Tukhugov can go out there and just wrestle and get that top position, he'll be able to win a decision. Will it be the sexiest way to win a fight? Probably not, but it'll get the result.
Laos Nan is saying stay away from this one, and Gazbach is saying that you picked Ramos, and Pascal saying Ramos by decision. I'm glad there's no names out there like Michael Bisping had to read on his podcast, and I take the time to read it before I say it. Hebos taking on old Vina. Matt switches pick. I've still got Vina in this one.
I don't like to switch my pick. I really don't. But I've gone back and I just keep on thinking, okay, Vina had trouble volume striking with someone like Mackenzie Dern. I understand with Dern, there's still the threat of the takedown. There's a lot more than just the striking. But still, I worry about Hebos getting off to a big lead in this fight. And then Jenny Hoba just trying to fight from behind. And if she is trying to be over-aggressive, if she is just charging forward in a lot of her strikes and takedown attempts, I do think Hebos' footwork is going to be good enough to just keep her on the outside of her range and just pick her apart with volume shots.
I think Vina's going to close that distance like glue, and she's going to be on Hebos. And Hebos is one of those ones that when you're up against the cage, bigger upper body where you can really just kind of muscle people around. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But I think Vina's strikings continue to improve. You already know how good her ground game is. I'm really eager to see this fight. But for me, I've got Vina as the underdog in this one. Matt, our next fight, Ankalaev taking on Volkan Oezdemir. The fight companion is right here. We're going to start 5 minutes or so before the pay-per-view. And I say pay-per-view because for Canadians, it's still $64.99. I know for you Americans it's free, whatever. But if you're a Canadian, you got to pony up like the rest of us. I'm going to have to pay the $64.99. And M Daily 119, thank you so much, because that super chat helps us pay for the pay-per-view, saying thanks as always, fellas. Keep them high and tight. Thanks, Gene. Matt, in this fight, I like the more accurate technical striker in Magomed Ankalaev.
Volkan Oezdemir's a tough night in the office, though, and if he were able to land like a big overhand right, I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit, but I do like Ankalaev. I think he's a more accurate striker, and that's the thing that I always used to bring up about Ankalaev that I kind of forgot about and didn't say this week. He doesn't throw a lot of wasted techniques. When you think about Magomed Ankalaev, I don't often think about him missing these looping overhand rights and leaving himself way out of position. He is very like A to B, cuts a lot of fat off his technique, so I do like Ankalaev.
Matt, both of us going with Ankalaev in this one. Matt, whoops. Our next fight is Li Jingliang taking on Khamzat Chimaev, and I don't think it's going to be like Floyd Mayweather when he played with his food and took on Logan Paul. Now I finally break out the shirt that most people, I don't know if they even realized I had it on. Because in this fight, I think Li Jingliang's actually one of the more attractive underdogs on the main card. Because for Chimaev, there's just so many unknowns. You've been out of competition for so long where you used to be so active. You had a hard time making the weight. How's your cardio affected by your long layoff? And we know exactly why. So when it comes to a fight like this, it really is tricky with Jingliang, who is stiff. Doesn't defend takedowns great, but when he's striking, it's in his world, man, he can knock out some of the best guys in the world, beating Zaleski, who's a ranked fighter, beating Santiago Ponzinibbio. You know exactly how good he is. I like Chimaev in this fight for those takedowns, but man, it's a tough one.
Khamzat Chimaev trains with the perfect guy. Guram Kukataladze. Because you know what Guram can do? Strike on the outside.
From Southpaw.
Exactly. And emulate Li Jingliang. Because he is a much more flexible version of what Li Jingliang is. Now, I think Jingliang hits quite a bit harder. Just his one-punch ability is quite uncommon. Because when you look at Jingliang, like, he doesn't look like he has this one-punch kind of power that he does. But he really is unique in that aspect. And I do think it is because of his weird technique. He is sort of stiff when he throws shots. And he puts a lot behind them. It's just, with Khamzat, until he has like a Clayton Kershaw type of a back injury where it's like, okay, you really rely on your wind up and your back, and now that's an injury that I worry about. I think Chimaev's just going to keep on wrestling guys, smashing guys to his way to the top. Now, when he fights Leon Edwards, when he fights, Usman, Covington, Gilbert Burns, Vicente Luque, that'll be a conversation for another day, but I do think the guys outside the top 10, Chimaev should be able to beat.
Dave's disappointed in the shirt. Mike Housing, let's tear the cover off. Hey. Ooh. We even incorporated part of a video here. Monty Harrison's the autograph. Matt, we'll move on to our next one.
My McDonald's order. McChicken. Poutine, large Sprite. Easy.
Double Big Mac, which for some reason they don't have in the menu really all that much. Poutine, and then I probably go with a Coke and a McChicken on the side. So that's what mine is. Volkov is taking on Marcin Tybura. Matt, I really, really do like this fight because, again, two totally different styles, but when they clash, it should be a good one. 3 rounders, so you have to wonder who's able to put on the work a little bit more. Both guys have main evented cards. Both guys have had great win streaks. And for Volkov, yeah, he did lose his last fight, but he has a great opportunity to put some wind in his sails and fight Curtis Blades again, or Rosenstrike again. See, it's very top-heavy in this division. I'd say maybe a Tom Aspinall, but when we go with this one, I like Volkov here.
I like Volkov a lot. I really don't see a world where Tybura wins this. Stylistically, this is a really hard matchup for Tybura. It really is.
All right, Matt. It should be a good one. Both of us going with Volkov. Makhachev taking on Dan Hooker. Makhachev, enough said.
Dan Hooker has all the techniques we like. When a primary striker is fighting a wrestler, it's just going to be really hard to grapple for any period of time with Makhachev.
Travis Duarte saying, what's Poutine? Come on.
Fries.
Travis.
Gravy.
Matt,
cheese.
He knows what it is.
Perfect.
He's joking.
I'm just breaking it down.
Piotr Jan's taking on Corey Sandhagen. I've got Piotr Jan with those next level Hall of Fame badge fight IQ that he actually has.
Yeah, if he can just stay sound defensively early on, avoid some of the explosiveness and some of those early flurries from Sandhagen, I think Jan can have a lot of success in this fight. But again, we don't think this is going to be fight of the night, fight of the year caliber stuff without it being a close and competitive fight.
Leo is saying Canadian bacon. Pea meal bacon's gross. Matt, next fight, main event.
Back bacon and pea meal are different.
Yeah, I don't like back bacon. No, I do like back bacon.
Yeah.
Matt, main event, big one. Jan Blachowicz taking on Glover Teixeira, and I hate to be that guy. I hate to be him. But, yeah, I've got the other favorite here. I've got Jan Blachowicz in this fight.
Glover's old enough to be my dad. But it just tells you how long his success has been in the UFC, and it really has been impressive because for Glover, he was that hyped up prospect. He got his title shot. It didn't turn out his way. It's just sort of been a top rank guy ever since, but it's really nice to see him finally break through again and get this big opportunity because I doubt Teixeira is going to get a lot of other title shots. Like, this is probably his last big chance.
Really?
I know, a hot take on my part, but still, it's nice to see people who work really hard get rewarded for it. So hopefully this is a great fight.
Like Ian Parker, who's a part of the PFL, and it's just crazy to see the good guys getting opportunities. So good for Ian on that one.
I'll be sad no matter, like, this main event is going to be bittersweet because you don't want to see other guy lose.
That's true. Billy Brown hitting us up in the super chat for the Canadian pay-per-view tax. Let's freaking go, boys.
Thank
Matt,
you,
we hit over on the channel, so it's going to give us the opportunity to pay for that pay-per-view. So thank you so much for everybody that hit the super chat. You can find all of the neat stuff at FightNightPicks.com. Joshua Hart's full card betting guide is in the preview section. You can find the podcast. You can find the merch, all the different stuff. I mean, you can't actually buy this. We only bought 2 of them. It was a special order. It was what it was, but all sorts of great stuff over there. You can find us on Instagram at Fight Night Picks, at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. All sorts of great stuff over there. We're going to have the Fight Companion. We're going to start at 5 minutes before the pay-per-view. But if you want to hang out, we get a chance to answer some of those questions over in the chat. I'm really looking forward to it. It's such a good card.
Yeah, this is going to be a phenomenal pay-per-view, so make sure you check it out. And this is the great thing. We've never said this before, but there's normally on a main card of a pay-per-view one fight that's kind of tough to do commentary for. This doesn't have that at all. They're all bangers. 6 phenomenal fights. I could be more excited for this.
You got Poten saying, who buys the pay-per-views? If you want it to go well, you pay for it. So I'm really looking forward to it. UFC 268 coming up next weekend. I can't wait for those fights to preview them. I'm so excited for that too. It's a great time to be an MMA fan. And thank you so much to the fans of Fight Night Picks, because you guys make it special and you make this a lot of fun. So enjoy the day. Hopefully you can join us on the Fight Companion. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt.